Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Turnstile Talk, where we take a fast pass to the deepest corners of theme park history. No height requirement, but a love for all things theme parks is strongly recommended. Now, before we jump in, if you wouldn't mind doing me a favor as always and hitting that like and subscribe button, it really does help the channel. Now, today, I want to explore what separates a good attraction from a bad attraction. We hear those rankings a lot. This attraction was good. This attraction was bad. But what does that actually mean? Well, today we'll be analyzing 4 attractions from 2 theme park giants that I'm sure you all have heard of. 2 great ones, Expedition Everest at Disney's Animal Kingdom and The Amazing Adventures of Spider-Man at Universal's Islands of Adventure. And then we'll go to 2 weaker ones, Tiana's Bayou Adventure at Magic Kingdom, and the infamous Fast and Furious Supercharged at Universal Studios Florida. We won't be focusing on the history or development of these rides per se, but instead looking purely at their design, execution, and impact. So, what separates an unforgettable experience from a forgettable one? Well, buckle up as we explore what makes a great theme park attraction versus what makes a not-so-great theme park attraction. Let's get into it. At its core, a great theme park attraction needs a compelling story. It doesn't have to be complicated, but it does have to be clear, engaging, and immersive. Storytelling isn't just about having a narrative. It's about how effectively that narrative is communicated through the ride experience. It needs to be intuitive, meaning the audience should be able to understand what's happening without being constantly spoon-fed information. The best rides allow guests to feel like active participants in a story rather than passive observers. Every element, the queue, the set design, the audio, the mechanics, they should work in tandem to create a cohesive experience that unfolds naturally. Now, let's start with Expedition Everest. This ride does an incredible job of storytelling through its environment. From the moment you step into the queue, the story is unfolding. You aren't just walking through a themed line, you're actively engaging with the world that the ride takes place in. Artifacts, photos, newspaper clippings, and even the wear and tear on the walls all contribute to the mythos of the Yeti. The queue is more than just decoration. It sets up the stakes. You understand that something is wrong, that something is lurking in the mountains, and that you're about to embark on a dangerous journey. Even before boarding, you feel a sense of anticipation. Now, when the ride itself begins, the story plays out naturally. The climb up the mountain feels foreboding, with the clicking of the chain lift amplifying the tension. And as you reach the peak, the broken track adds an element of dread. Something has clearly sabotaged the railway, and the realization that you have no way forward enhances the fear. The ride's backward section serves a dual purpose. It's not just a thrilling moment, but a narrative beat that underscores the chaos. Then the final reveal of the Yeti, even in its now infamous Disco Yeti state, is impactful because of the build-up. Everest's story is simple. You're on an expedition, something goes wrong, and the Yeti is the cause. There's no need for a pre-show or long-winded exposition. The world building does the work for you. It's visceral, intuitive, and extremely effective. Now, compare that to Tiana's Bayou Adventure. This ride struggles because it forces a convoluted story into a setting that doesn't need one. Instead of experiencing the magic of New Orleans and the Bayou in an organic way, the ride constantly reminds you that Tiana is looking for a missing ingredient for a party, an oddly low stakes and unnecessary plotline. It's a bizarre choice for a ride that could have simply let guests experience the wonder of the Bayou without needing a forced narrative. Unlike Everest, which lets the setting and tension build naturally, Tiana's story is over-explained. The ride relies heavily on dialogue to tell the story, with constant reminders from the characters about what's happening. Instead of showing the audience an engaging adventure, it tells them one, which ultimately makes the ride feel passive rather than immersive. Another issue is the lack of a clear emotional arc. Expedition Everest builds tension, fear, and excitement as the ride progresses, while Tiana's Bayou Adventure feels flat. The stakes never feel high, and because the storyline is so mundane, finding an ingredient, it fails to make guests feel like they're on a meaningful journey. A great ride story should make the guests feel like they have a role in what's happening, but here, the ride feels more like watching an animated short play out while you float past it. Now, let's shift over to Universal and look at Spider-Man versus Fast and Furious Supercharged. Spider-Man excels at storytelling through action. You are immediately put in the shoes of a journalist caught in the middle of a citywide attack by Spidey's rogues gallery. The ride vehicle effects and seamless transitions between physical sets and screens make you feel like you're inside a comic book. The stakes are high, the pacing is perfect, and you don't need constant narration telling you what's happening. It's shown to you. The pacing builds tension with escalating threats and increasing chaos as Spider-Man battles the villains. The ride doesn't stop to explain, it just lets the action speak for itself. Now, Spider-Man storytelling is also enhanced by its use of the first-person perspective. You're not watching the story happen, you're actively in it. The seamless blend of set pieces, projection, and motion simulation makes it feel like Spider-Man is interacting with you in real time. This is a stark contrast to rides like Fast and Furious, which struggle with integrating the audience into the story in a meaningful way. Fast and Furious, on the other hand, is the exact opposite. The story is told through a very awkward, disjointed pre-show sequence that over-explains things nobody cares about. Instead of dropping guests directly into an intense high-speed chase, it drags them through unnecessary exposition. Then you board a party bus, which somehow gets involved in a chase scene that lacks any tension or payoff. Instead of immersion, you get repetitive dialogue, distracting projections, and really a ride experience that doesn't feel like it belongs in the world of Fast and Furious at all. Now, a major failing of Fast and Furious Supercharged is that it assumes the guests care about characters and relationships from the film franchise. Instead of making the experience self-contained, the ride assumes that the audience already has an emotional investment in Dom, Letty, and the crew. But even for fans of the franchise, the way these characters are presented in the ride is truly lifeless. There's stilted dialogue and an over-reliance on awkward pre-show segments that stall the momentum before the actual ride even begins. The ride experience itself is very disjointed. The supposed action is shown through screens rather than felt through dynamic movement, and the lack of real-world stakes makes it feel weightless. Unlike Spider-Man, where you feel the impact of every explosion, swing, and villain attack, Fast and Furious again feels passive. There's no sense of urgency or danger, just a lot of generic shouting and bad CGI explosions happening around you. Ultimately, what separates a well-told ride story from a weak one is how well it integrates the guest into the experience. A great story-driven attraction makes the rider feel like an essential part of the narrative, while a bad one makes them feel like an observer with no real involvement. Expedition Everest and Spider-Man achieve this by using environmental storytelling, escalating stakes, and intuitive pacing. Meanwhile, Tiana's Bayou Adventure and Fast and Furious Supercharged struggle because they rely too much on passive storytelling, excessive exposition, and low-stakes scenarios that truly fail to engage the guest on an emotional level. But storytelling is just one piece of the puzzle. Even the best narrative falls flat if the world around it doesn't feel real. A compelling story must be reinforced by deep, believable immersion, because a guest who doesn't feel transported into the world of the attraction will never fully connect with the story being told. Now, immersion is what makes a theme park attraction feel like a living, breathing world. It's not just about visuals, it's about sound and movement, and how well the experience tricks your brain into believing what's happening around you. Great immersion creates a sense of escapism, making you forget you're in a theme park and transporting you into another world. Poor immersion, on the other hand, constantly reminds you that you're on a ride, breaking the illusion and leaving you disconnected from the experience. Let's start with Expedition Everest. This ride is an absolute masterclass in immersion from the moment you enter the queue. The attention to detail in the queue design is staggering. You are not just waiting in line. You're traveling through a meticulously crafted Himalayan village completed with hand-painted murals, aged artifacts, and authentic Nepalese decorations. Even the flooring feels real, with worn-down pathways that give the sense that thousands of explorers have come before you. The sound design adds a whole other layer. Distant animal calls, gusts of wind, and the subtle murmurs of village life that makes it feel like you're actually in the mountains. Then there's the ride experience itself. The slow, deliberate climb builds tension with breathtaking views that make you feel like you're ascending an actual mountain. The broken tracks are an iconic moment of immersion. When you reach the peak and realize there's nowhere to go, there's a genuine moment of panic before your train plummets backwards into the dark unknown. The sensation of being lost in the tunnels, the flashes of the Yeti shadow, and the final encounter all contribute to the feeling that you are truly at the mercy of a powerful force of nature. Even though the animatronic is now stuck in the previously mentioned Disco Yeti mode, the lighting and sound and scale of the encounter still make it an impactful moment. Every piece of this ride is designed to pull you into an adventure, and that's why it remains one of Disney's most immersive attractions. Now let's contrast that with Tiana's Bayou Adventure. The ride attempts to create an immersive world, but it falls short in execution. The environments feel extremely artificial. While the bayou should feel rich with mystery and texture, everything looks too clean and staged. The characters lack depth, often floating in a way that doesn't convincingly blend with the physical sets. Instead of pulling you into a lived-in world, it feels like you're drifting past disconnected dioramas. The ride also struggles with atmosphere. There's very little sense of adventure or discovery, and the pacing of the scenes doesn't allow for tension to build. Instead of feeling like you're on a journey through a mystical bayou, it feels like you're on a passive tour being narrated to you. The ride never truly makes you feel like you've entered another world, and that in itself lacks the deep immersion that prevents it from being a truly standout attraction. Now, switching over to The Amazing Adventures of Spider-Man, we see another example of near-perfect immersion. This ride does an extraordinary job of making you feel like you've stepped straight into a comic book. From the moment you board your ride vehicle, everything around you feels alive. The transitions between physical sets and projection screens are so seamless that your brain can't distinguish where one ends and the other begins. Now, this is where universal storytelling and immersion truly shine. Spider-Man never lets you feel like you're watching a screen because the combination of real sets, motion simulation, and 3D effects trick your senses into believing you're actually swinging through New York City. The way the ride vehicle tilts and reacts to the action makes it feel like you're part of the fight. And when your vehicle is swinging between buildings, it's a thrilling, believable moment because of how well the ride syncs movement with the visuals. The entire ride feels like a high-energy comic book adventure brought to life, and you never feel like an observer. You feel like a participant. Now, on the flip side, Fast and Furious Supercharged is a perfect example of how not to do immersion. From the start, the ride struggles to make you feel like it's in its world. The queue is a generic warehouse filled with random cars, but it lacks any meaningful storytelling elements that would make guests feel engaged. The pre-show segments are extremely awkward, relying on stilted performances from the actors that fail to make the experience feel urgent or exciting. Then you board a massive ride vehicle that doesn't match the fast-paced, high-energy world of Fast and Furious at all. The immersion completely falls apart when the ride starts. The screens are large, but poorly integrated, making it painfully obvious that you're watching a projection rather than experiencing a real event. The ride vehicle barely moves, creating a true disconnect between what you're seeing and what you're feeling. Unlike Spider-Man, which seamlessly blends movement and visuals, Fast and Furious feels static. You're watching an action scene happen around you rather than being inside of it. The supposed high-speed chase lacks intensity because the movement doesn't match the visuals, and the repetitive nature of the experience with constant dialogue interruptions keeps breaking the immersion. Instead of feeling like you're in the Fast and Furious universe, you feel like you're watching a low-quality simulation. Now, a great attraction makes you truly forget you're on a ride. A bad attraction, on the other hand, constantly reminds you of it. That's why immersion is one of the most critical aspects of a truly great theme park experience. When executed properly, immersion creates a seamless blend between story, environment, and ride mechanics, allowing guests to step into a world that feels completely real. When done poorly, it turns a potentially exciting experience into a lifeless, disconnected series of scenes. The ability to maintain immersion throughout an attraction is what separates legendary theme park rides from truly forgettable ones. But immersion alone isn't enough to make a ride great. A theme park attraction also needs a ride system that supports and enhances the experience. Let's take a look at how the physical mechanics of a ride can make or break an attraction. As mentioned, a good ride system should complement the story and immersion. The mechanics of an attraction need to reinforce the narrative and enhance the sensory experience of the guest. When a ride system is well integrated, it elevates everything around it, creating an experience that feels fluid and compelling. However, when a ride system is poorly utilized, it actively works against immersion, creating a disconnect between what guests see and what they feel. Starting again with Expedition Everest, this is a perfect example of a ride system being used to its fullest potential. The roller coaster mechanics are not just about speed and thrills, they serve the story. The ride starts with a smooth ascent, simulating a real trek up a mountain, building anticipation as riders climb higher and higher. The broken track moment delivers a striking narrative beat. The sudden stop at the peak leaves riders staring into a seemingly impassable gap, reinforcing the sense of danger and adventure. The backward drop that follows is not just a gimmick. It enhances the disorientation of being lost in a dark cavern, fleeing from an unseen terror. The final plunge and high-speed maneuvers further heighten the sense of chaos as the Yeti's presence grows stronger. The ride system is fluid, unpredictable, and perfectly in sync with the story it tells, making it one of Disney's most engaging thrill rides. Now, alternatively, let's look at Tiana's Bayou Adventure. It uses the same ride system as Splash Mountain, a classic log flume layout with indoor and outdoor segments leading up to a dramatic final drop. However, the ride's pacing is where it falters. While Splash Mountain was expertly structured to balance slow-moving story moments with engaging dips and drops, Tiana's Bayou Adventure struggles with momentum. Some sections feel like they drag on too long, while key moments lack the unnecessary build-up to feel impactful. The system itself is fine, it's been used successfully before, but the way it's utilized here results in a ride that never quite reaches the level of excitement or narrative cohesion that it should. Instead of creating a sense of adventure, the ride feels like a passive journey that never fully capitalizes on its ride system's potential. Now, shifting over to Universal, The Amazing Adventures of Spider-Man is a masterclass in blending ride technology with storytelling. The ride's motion-based system, which places guests in a vehicle that moves along a track while interacting with 3D screens and physical sets, creates a perfect illusion of movement. Unlike other screen-based attractions, Spider-Man seamlessly integrates its vehicle's motion with what is happening on screen, making each swing, fall, and explosion feel truly real. The addition of heat effects and water sprays and synchronized lighting makes the experience even more immersive. The ride system doesn't just support the story, it's essential to making guests feel like they are inside a high-energy Marvel comic book adventure. Contrast that with Fast and Furious Supercharged, which uses the same ride system as Skull Island Reign of Kong, but to far less effect. The problem isn't necessarily with the system itself, it's arguably worked well before, but rather with how poorly it serves the experience. Fast and Furious is supposed to make riders feel like they're part of a high-speed car chase, yet the large party bus-style ride vehicle barely moves. It truly removes any real sensation of speed or intensity. The screens attempt to create the illusion of motion, but the lack of physical movement undermines the experience. The disconnect between what the guest sees and what they physically feel is jarring, making the entire experience feel like an unconvincing simulation rather than an adrenaline-pumping chase. The slow pacing of the ride and the excessive reliance on repetitive dialogue make the experience feel dull rather than exhilarating. Unlike Spider-Man, which masterfully uses its technology to make the action feel real, Fast and Furious exposes the weakness of its system by failing to properly integrate movement, timing, and spectacle. A great ride system should work in harmony with storytelling and immersion, reinforcing the themes of the attraction rather than feeling like an afterthought. Expedition Everest and Spider-Man succeed because their mechanics are fine-tuned to complement their narratives. The way Everest's track switches and Spider-Man's vehicle reacts to the action makes every moment feel intentional and meaningful. On the other hand, Tiana's Bayou adventure and Fast and Furious demonstrate how a ride system alone isn't enough. Without careful pacing, strong integration, and a sense of real stakes, even a functional ride system can lead to an underwhelming experience. Now, at the end of the day, the best attractions aren't just about the thrills or the technology. They're about how all of these elements, storytelling, immersion, and ride mechanics, come together to create something unforgettable. When done right, a ride feels like a complete journey where every moment, every scene, and every detail works toward a single goal: to transport guests into another world, even if just for a few minutes. That's what separates the great attractions from the forgettable ones, and that's what theme park design should always strive for. So, what have we learned? At their best, theme park attractions seamlessly blend storytelling, immersion, and ride mechanics to create an experience that guests will never forget. Expedition Everest and The Amazing Adventures of Spider-Man show us how each element can work together to transport riders into another world, making them feel like true participants in an unfolding adventure. On the other hand, Tiana's Bayou Adventure and Fast and Furious highlight the pitfalls of disjointed storytelling, weak immersion, and underwhelming ride systems that fail to create a cohesive experience. When all the pieces align, a theme park attraction becomes more than just a ride. It becomes a memory, a moment that sticks with guests long after they've left the park. These are the attractions that people talk about for years, the ones that define entire generations of parkgoers. But when those elements are poorly executed, the result is an attraction that fades into obscurity, forgotten as soon as the ride vehicle rolls back into the station. As theme park fans, designers, and storytellers, it's worth asking, what makes an attraction truly great? Is it technology, the thrill factor, or the emotional connection that an experience creates? The best rides are the ones that leave an impact, that make guests feel something. Whether it's the heart-racing tension of escaping the Yeti, the excitement of swinging through New York with Spider-Man, or the sheer joy of stepping into a fully realized world where the impossible feels real. That's what we should strive for in theme park design. Not just rides, but experiences. Not just motion, but emotion. That's the difference between a good attraction and a great one. And that is what will continue to set the legends apart from the forgettable ones. I want to thank you guys for listening and tuning into this episode of Turnstile Talk. I hope it was a fun one. It's definitely unique. And really want to hear your comments below. What are your good attractions and what are your bad attractions? Do we think we're going to see more good attractions in the future from both Disney and Universal? Or do we think that some of the more recent additions are indicative of what we will see in the future? I'm definitely very excited to see where things go. Now, as always, be sure to subscribe, leave a like, and I will see you guys at the gift shop. Thanks again.